Let's stay with this particular story now and get reaction. We speak to Mbekezeli Benjamin, Judges Matter Researcher and Advocacy Officer. Mbekezeli, certainly a historic moment. We'll get to that in just a moment. But what is your reaction to what happened in Parliament?
Well, look, today was a vindication of the Constitution and its accountability mechanisms. That is something that we must not lose sight of, is that everyone under the Constitution is subject to the Constitution and the law, and that is an important point that we would wish to put forward. This is, of course, a sad and historic day in that one of the most senior judges of our country has now been officially removed from office. It is not something that anyone can take pride in, because we never want to see our judges in this situation. So in many ways, it is significant, it is historical, and we are pointing out just the fact that the Constitution is at work.
And he, of course, arguing through his application earlier on, which, of course, was dismissed, and I'll get to that as well, saying that Parliament does not have the right processes to deal with this, and also ensuring that it's dealt with in a fair or a lawful manner. Do you foresee a legal challenge?
Well, look, I can't rule out a legal challenge, because over the last 15 years, there have been several legal challenges. So I can't really rule any of it out. But it would be very, very difficult to make that kind of argument, because it has already been made at the Johannesburg High Court, where Judge Hlophe argued that the process that the Judicial Service Commission followed was unfair to him. It was violated the principle of judicial independence and the separation of powers. And he wanted the High Court to set aside the process and for Parliament to reopen an inquiry. And what the High Court said is that Parliament cannot do that. The JSC has the authority in terms of the Constitution to do the inquiry, and they've done their job and found him guilty. It is now Parliament to do the vote. And so I can't see any legal challenge to this process succeeding.
And not only a significant, but quite historic moment as well. But, Mbekezeli, one wonders, you mentioned it, I mean, the length of time that it's taken to get to this particular point. And I wonder, what does it tell us about the processes that are in place to ensure accountability in these particular matters, especially when you look at the fact that, I mean, it's over a decade. It was really nearing 2 decades now.
Yes, absolutely. It has taken far too long for this process to run through. But we must also remember, Bongiwe, that in 2008, when this complaint arose, the legal framework was very different. In fact, there wasn't a legal framework in place. It was only set up in about 2010. And still, even when the law was amended to set up a framework to hold judges accountable, it was still subject to many, many legal challenges. So it wouldn't be fair to blame Judge Hlophe for some of the delays in these proceedings. Some of it has really been part of setting up the process. But now we do have a system that exists for holding judges accountable, although we are still concerned that it still takes too long. It shouldn't take more than 6 months in an ideal world. But in most cases, it does take a couple of years. And that is what we want the JSC to fix.
And let's talk about another, of course, significant matter that is playing out alongside this particular matter as well, and that is around, Judge Nkola Mutata and the significance of that particular matter and what happens in Parliament then in that case.
So the case of Judge Mutata is also very much significant. He was part of the first crop of black judges to be appointed to the High Court. And so he's a person who has a very rich legacy in the legal profession. But of course, the conduct that he's accused of is quite serious. The fact that he was found guilty in a criminal court for driving drunk, and later on in the Judicial Conduct Tribunal for making a false statement in court. So all of those are very serious allegations and serious findings against him. And so the vote that is currently happening in Parliament is to say what happens next. And Parliament seems to be going in the direction of also voting for Judge Mutata's removal and impeachment from office, which again will be historical. It will also be a sad moment because he's already in retirement. And so it is not, again, a day of good news for the judiciary.
And then, you know, we look ahead, Mbekezeli, because yes, this process is happening in Parliament, but the reality is that now it also speaks again to accountability around the judiciary as well. And I wonder then, if we are to look at these processes and how far they've come and where things are now, what does it tell us about the future then when it comes to areas of accountability there?
Well, we have a positive future to look forward to, Bongiwe, because what today's proceedings tell us is that no one is above accountability. Everyone, no matter how high the office that you hold, you're still subject to constitutional accountability, and the mechanisms that are there to hold you accountable will function. And what we're seeing today is Parliament stepping up and finally playing its role as the repository of constitutional power in society, and the holder and the representative of the broader public of South Africa. So those are positive messages. And of course, the second message is that all our judges, we expect them to respect judicial ethics all the time. They are held to very high standards because they hold very important offices. And so today was a reminder that the office that they hold has a huge responsibility, and that they will be held accountable when they don't do the right thing.
Mbekezeli, thank you so much for your time, and we are still watching what happens then in Parliament as the proceedings continue. That's Mbekezeli Benjamin, Judges Matter Researcher and Advocacy Officer. So we'll continue then to update you on this particular story, as it's really quite a significant moment, as Mbekezeli says, not only in terms of accountability, but in terms of the Constitution, as well as the processes then that are also in the spotlight. But it will also be interesting to see if the Judge President, Judge Hlophe, is then going to choose the legal route again in order to then be able to deal with this particular matter. Because remember, it comes against the backdrop of his earlier interdict in the Western Cape High Court. So we'll continue to keep you updated on this particular story.